Root has always had a lot of strategic depth. That depth is what has kept me and so many other fans coming back to play. But the introduction of Advanced Setup, or AdSet, in the Marauder expansion added a wrinkle to Root that a newer player might not appreciate the significance of. If Table Talk is the game above the game, then AdSet is the game before the game. That might have been something I've heard the hosts of the Woodland War Machine podcast say, but I can't remember now. Check that podcast out if you haven't already, by the way. It's great. In my opinion, the draft is almost as important as the actual game itself. You have a chance to gain an edge over your opponents here, so why not take it? Conversely, you also have the chance to shoot yourself in the foot. I say that not to intimidate you, but to encourage you to really think about the draft. And that's what we'll be doing today. I've prepared a mock draft on the autumn map for this video, and I'm planning on mock drafting on all of the other maps in the future. Here are the AdSet rules. Feel free to pause and read through them if you aren't familiar. It starts with step 7 because the prior steps aren't particularly relevant to the faction draft itself. I'm making this video now because I'm headed to RootCon in a few weeks and participating in the tournament there. Since this is, in a sense, tournament practice for me, the Vagabond in these drafts will be using Despot Infamy. DI is a leader-approved house rule that tones down the Vagabond's infamy scoring by making it akin to the Erie's Despot leader ability. Instead of scoring 1 point per hostile piece removed, the Vagabond scores 1 point per battle in which a hostile piece is removed. Keep that in mind whenever the Vagabond is in one of these drafts. Our draft consists of the birds, otters, rats, tinker vagabond, and lizards, which are locked because they are the last insurgent faction. Some people, myself included, house rule the draft so that no faction is locked if 2 or more militant factions are in the draft, but I figured I should do it by the books here. If you need to reference any faction setup rules later on, you can come back to this point in the video using the timestamps embedded in the timeline. Also, if you aren't familiar with how the rats play, I'll link a great how to play video by NitroRev in the description. So here's the map with randomized clearing suits. The 4th seat player's hand consists of Mouse Bag, Murine Broker, Fox Ambush, Mouse Ambush, and Boat Builders. Let's get right into it and discuss the merits of each faction. Feel free to pause here though and think through it for yourself first if you want. We don't have any prowess items in hand, those being tea, sword, crossbow, or hammer, so rats don't seem like the best choice here. Lack of tea also makes Vagabond an unappealing choice. We can't choose lizards, which leaves birds and otters on the table. If we didn't have any bird cards, there would be a tough decision to make here, but thankfully we have the cards we need for God of War. It's worth noting that the table could attempt to coordinate a turmoil for us here, but the policing ability of God of War will be necessary to keep rats in check, so we should make this case if the other players start talking about turmoiling us. Even if we need to put 2 cards and move on the first turn, I'd rather have birds than otters here. Otters and Tinker will have quite a hard time staying away from birds and rats, the 2 most violent factions in the game, in this matchup. The God of War strategy with Erie involves choosing the charismatic leader, putting a bird card in build and a suited move card matching your starting roost in move on the first turn, and never turmoiling throughout the course of the game. So you're going to keep that 1 bird card in build and only put bird cards in recruit, and only put suited cards in battle where you know you'll be able to get battles reliably and not turmoil. So with that in mind, as far as setup goes, clearing 4 gives us access to 12, which is a nice spot to set up an early roost. Its connectivity also means that, if necessary, we have the most paths available through which to find our turn 1 battle. Since we're planning on going through 12, we want to keep Boat Builders and 2 of the mouse cards. It's nice to have the ambush accounted for, and it also can't hurt to take an item card out of the deck, so we'll keep Mouse Ambush and Mouse Bag. The other option I'd consider would be starting in 2, in which case we'd keep the Fox Ambush instead of the Mouse Bag, and wouldn't change anything else. I prefer 4 though, because we can reach 4 of the 5 river clearings on turn 1, which could be important for getting our battle if the otters are in the game. So birds are now set up, which means lizards are unlocked, and the choice now falls to the 3rd seat. Our hand consists of Rabbit Ambush, Saboteurs, Rabbit Bag, Rabbit Tea, and Mouse Boot. Immediately, I'm sighing with relief seeing that tea in our hand, since it makes rats a much more appealing choice. Competing for items with a crafty Vagabond is annoying, but I'd much rather be one of the red factions in this game. Being able to craft tea on the first turn also limits Tinker to 5 refreshes per turn if they're drafted. As far as the setup itself goes, 5, 2, 6, and 3 are the only legal clearings since we need to be 2+ clearings away from enemy homelands. Of those, 2 and 3 allow us to craft tea. I prefer 2 in this case since it allows access to 5, which is fairly secluded and should be easy to oppress. My plan would be to choose the Grandiose mood in order to build a second stronghold in clearing 6 on our first turn, setting up a boot craft on turn 2. To that end, I'd keep the tea, boot, and ambush cards. So both of the red factions are off the table now. Our hand is League of Adventurous Mice, Rabbit Dominance, Tunnels, Master Engravers, and False Orders. I prefer not to play Vagabond without a guarantee I'll have tea at some point. Yes, Tinker does have day labor, but that requires use of the torch, and the table could also coordinate to keep the tea cards out of the discard if they wanted to. If we go with Lizards, our only real options are 11 and 7, since they're the only clearings with at least 2 building slots that aren't adjacent to enemy homelands. If we pick Otters, there's a chance Lizards go unpicked, and Lizards are one of Otter's best customers. Otters are going to need good business to have a chance at surviving this game, so with that in mind, I'm more inclined to go with Lizards here. As for setup, I'd choose 7 over 11 just to avoid getting in the way of the red factions as they inevitably crash into each other. This also gives us a warrior in 8, which is a great place to try and set up our other gardens. I'd keep Rabbit Dom, Tunnels, and False Orders. We have 2 decent options for the starting outcast. Mouse threatens both red factions with converts, but I don't know how impactful that will be overall. Rabbit gives us the option of reinforcing 8 with a warrior or 2 from 7 and immediately making it an unappealing target for the birds to build in. Since Rabbit more directly helps us out, that's what I'll go with. Alright, only 2 options left for us in the first seat. We have Fox Partisans, League of Adventurous Mice, Bird Boot, Soup Kitchens, and Fox Tea. With tea in hand and Tinker still available, this is probably the best we could have hoped for in the first seat. Again, Otters just struggle too much with the aggression present on this board in my opinion. Pretty much nothing to do setup wise here, we just want to be in the forest with access to all 4 ruins. We'll keep the Bird Boot, Soup Kitchens, and Tea. My planned first turn here would be to slip to 6, explore, move to 3, craft tea, and aid Lizards with Soup Kitchens. That might change depending on what quests end up getting drawn, but with the information that we have right now, that's what I would plan to do. And that's the end of our first mock draft. If you disagreed with any of my opinions, be sure to let me know in the comments. I love talking about this stuff if that wasn't already obvious. I'd also appreciate it if you left a like on the video, subscribed, all that YouTube stuff. And which faction do you think is in the best starting position just based on the draft? That's fun to think about too. I'm planning to do at least 3 more of these on the other maps, so I'll see you all in the next one.